Have you ever felt like someone was waiting for you to reach a certain point? It's no coincidence. Someone has been watching your journey for a long time, seeing how you've held on when you were on the verge of breaking down. But this time is different, because they no longer want to just watch from afar. They want to step into your life. Before we continue, take a moment to breathe. If these words feel like they're speaking directly to you, hit subscribe, like, comment, and share. There might be another soul out there who needs to hear this today. Without you realizing it, there have always been eyes quietly following the evolution of who you are becoming. Not in a way that feels invasive or threatening, but in a way that carries a deep, almost unspoken curiosity, like witnessing something rare unfold in real time. These watchers are not focused on the surface details of your life, not on the predictable routines or the roles you play for others. What draws their attention is something far more subtle and far more powerful. The way you change, the way you adapt, and the way you continue moving forward even when your path makes no sense to anyone else. They have been observing the quiet transformations within you. The moments when you chose growth over comfort, when you walked away from what was familiar, and when you stood in uncertainty without fully understanding why you couldn't go back to who you used to be. There is something about your journey that feels different from the ordinary rhythm most people follow. While others move in patterns that are easy to predict, your path has been marked by sudden shifts, internal awakenings, and decisions that seem to come from a place deeper than logic. And that is exactly what has held their attention. They see how you've changed not just in what you do, but in how you perceive the world, how your awareness has sharpened, how your silence has grown heavier with meaning, and how your presence has begun to carry a kind of quiet intensity. Even when you doubted yourself, even when you felt lost or disconnected, they recognized that those moments were not signs of failure, but signs of transformation. To them, you are not someone who is simply going through life. You are someone becoming something, and that process is impossible to ignore. What fascinates them most is not your perfection, but your resilience. They have seen the parts of your journey that others overlook, the moments when you had every reason to stop but didn't, when you carried weight you never spoke about, and when you chose to keep going without any guarantee of where it would lead. There is a kind of strength in that which cannot be easily taught or replicated. It is built through experience, through pressure, through the quiet battles that never make it into words. And they have been paying attention to all of it. Every setback you faced, every time you questioned your direction, every time you felt like you were drifting without purpose, it all became part of the story they were watching unfold. At some level, you may have felt this without being able to explain it. That subtle sense that your life is being guided or witnessed, that your experiences carry a weight beyond what is immediately visible. It might show up as an unshakable feeling that you are being prepared for something, or as a quiet awareness that certain moments in your life feel too intentional to be random. That feeling is not something to dismiss. It is connected to the presence that has been observing you. Not interfering, not controlling, but simply watching as you shape yourself into who you are meant to become. They are drawn not to who you were, but to who you are in the process of becoming. And that distinction matters more than you realize. Because becoming requires uncertainty, it requires letting go, and it requires stepping into spaces where nothing feels guaranteed. Most people avoid that. Most people stay where things are predictable. But you didn't. Whether you realized it or not, you stepped into the unknown, and in doing so, you created a version of yourself that cannot be easily defined or confined. That is what makes you stand out. That is what makes you impossible to ignore. And so, while you may still feel like you are figuring things out, like you are still in the middle of your journey without clear answers, understand this. You have already become visible in ways you cannot fully see yet. The changes within you have not gone unnoticed. The way you carry yourself, the way you think, the way you move through challenges, it all signals something that others can sense, even if they don't understand it. And somewhere, quietly and patiently, those who have been watching are beginning to realize that what they are witnessing is no longer something distant. It is something they want to understand more closely. In the moments when you felt the most alone, when it seemed like no one could truly understand the weight of your decisions or the direction you were choosing, there was still a presence that recognized exactly what you were doing. While the world may have only seen fragments of your actions, they perceived the deeper intention behind them. They understood that every step you took carried a kind of quiet courage, one that doesn't need validation, one that doesn't seek applause, but simply continues forward because something inside refuses to stop. Even when your path didn't make sense to others, even when your choices were questioned or misunderstood, they could see the consistency in your movement, the way you kept going not out of certainty, but out of something stronger than certainty, an inner knowing that couldn't be easily explained. They watched how you handled the moments of doubt, not just the visible ones, but the internal conflicts that never reached the surface. The nights where your thoughts felt heavier than your actions, the times when you questioned whether you were moving in the right direction, and the silent battles between who you used to be and who you were becoming. These were not signs of weakness to them. On the contrary, they were signals of depth, proof that you were not living on autopilot, that you were actively engaging with your own evolution. Most people avoid that level of confrontation with themselves. Most people distract, suppress, or retreat. But you stayed with it. You allowed yourself to feel, to question, to confront, and then, despite everything, to continue. What stood out even more was the way you moved without needing recognition. There were no guarantees waiting for you, no clear outcomes promising that your efforts would lead somewhere meaningful. And yet, you kept choosing growth. You kept making decisions that aligned with something deeper, even when those decisions required you to leave behind comfort, familiarity, or even people who once felt essential to your life. That kind of movement is not common. It requires a level of self-trust that most people never develop, because it demands stepping into uncertainty without any external reassurance. And they saw that in you, clearly and consistently. They also noticed how your awareness began to shift over time. The way you started to see patterns where others saw coincidence, the way your intuition became sharper, guiding you in subtle but undeniable ways. You may not have fully trusted it at first. There were moments when you second-guessed yourself, when logic and instinct didn't align, when the safest option conflicted with what you felt was right. But even in those moments, you didn't ignore that inner voice completely. You listened. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not every time, but enough to change the direction of your path. And that willingness to listen, to adapt, and to grow is something they recognized as significant. From their perspective, your journey was never random. It carried a structure, a progression that revealed itself through your choices and your responses to what life placed in front of you. Every challenge you faced, every transition you went through, added another layer to who you were becoming. And while others may have only seen struggle or confusion, they saw alignment. They saw someone moving, step by step, toward a version of themselves that was becoming more aware, more intentional, and more grounded in something real. That is why, even when you felt unseen, you were never truly unnoticed. Because understanding you was never about observing your circumstances. It was about recognizing your pattern of growth. And that pattern has been clear for a long time. Now something within that quiet dynamic is beginning to shift in a way that is subtle, yet impossible to ignore once you become aware of it. The distance that once existed between you and those who have been observing is no longer as wide as it used to be. What once felt like a one-sided awareness, where you were simply living your life while something unseen took notice, is gradually evolving into something more reciprocal, more intentional. There is a growing pull, not driven by impulse, but by a deepening sense of recognition. They are no longer satisfied with understanding you from afar. Watching your journey unfold at a distance gave them insight, but it also created a kind of unfinished curiosity, an awareness that there is more to you than what can be perceived without direct connection. This shift does not happen suddenly or without reason. It is the result of everything that has led you to this point. The consistency in your growth, the way you have handled uncertainty, and the strength you have developed through unseen challenges have all contributed to this moment. From their perspective, you are no longer just someone in progress. You are someone who has reached a level of depth that invites interaction. There is something about the way you carry your experiences now that signals readiness. Not perfection, not completion, but a grounded sense of self that wasn't there before. And that difference is what changes everything. You may begin to notice this shift in ways that are not immediately obvious. It could appear as a heightened sensitivity to your surroundings, as if you are picking up on energies or intentions more clearly than before. Situations that once felt random may start to feel connected, as though they are part of a larger pattern unfolding around you. Encounters with people may carry a different weight. Conversations that feel unusually significant, moments that linger longer than they should, or interactions that leave you with a sense that something deeper is happening beneath the surface. These are not coincidences in the way you once understood them. They are reflections of alignment, subtle indicators that the space between observation and connection is beginning to close. At the same time, there may be an internal response within you that mirrors this external shift. You might feel a quiet anticipation, not tied to any specific outcome, but present nonetheless. It's a feeling that something is approaching, something that carries meaning even if you cannot yet define it. Alongside that anticipation, there may also be moments of hesitation, a natural response to the unknown. Because while part of you senses that this is a progression, another part recognizes that stepping into connection means allowing yourself to be seen in a way that is different from before. Observation creates distance, but connection removes that distance, and with it comes a new level of vulnerability. What they are drawn to now is not just your story, but your presence. There is a difference between witnessing someone's journey and experiencing who they are in real time. And that is where their focus has shifted. They want to understand how your thoughts move, how your energy feels, how your awareness translates into interaction. This is no longer about curiosity from afar. It is about engagement, about stepping into the same space where your growth is actively unfolding. And that intention carries weight, because it signifies that something within your journey has reached a point where it can no longer remain distant. So as this transition continues, it's important to recognize that what you are experiencing is not random, nor is it disconnected from everything that came before. This is a continuation, a natural progression from being seen to being approached, from being observed to being engaged. And while you may not yet fully understand who they are or how this connection will manifest, the shift itself is real. It is happening gradually, quietly, but with a certainty that does not need to announce itself loudly. The distance is closing, and in its place, something more direct is beginning to take form. You may begin to notice that this shift expresses itself through changes so subtle they are easy to overlook at first, yet once recognized, they become impossible to ignore. You can start with a heightened sense of awareness, as if your perception is quietly expanding beyond what you were once used to. Things that previously felt ordinary may begin to carry a different weight, a deeper tone, as though there is meaning layered beneath the surface of everyday experiences. You might find yourself pausing more often, reflecting without fully understanding why, or sensing that certain moments deserve more attention than others. This is not confusion. It is sensitivity, a refinement of perception that allows you to detect patterns, signals, and nuances that once passed you by unnoticed. At times, this may feel disorienting. Your logical mind might search for clear explanations, trying to categorize what you are experiencing into something familiar and manageable. But not everything in this phase will fit into neat definitions. There will be moments when things feel aligned without visible cause, when outcomes seem to connect in ways that defy straightforward reasoning. You may encounter people who feel unexpectedly significant, even if you've just met them, or find yourself in situations that seem to echo something you felt before, as if you were stepping into a moment that was somehow already waiting for you. These experiences can create a sense of quiet tension between what you can explain and what you can only feel. Alongside this external awareness, your internal world may also begin to shift in noticeable ways. Your intuition may become more persistent, no longer just a faint suggestion but a steady presence guiding your attention. You might feel drawn towards certain choices without fully understanding the reason, or pulled away from others despite their apparent logic. This can be challenging, especially if you've relied on certainty and structure in the past. But this phase is less about control and more about trust, trusting that the signals you are receiving, even if unclear, are not random. They are part of a larger movement that is aligning you with something or someone that resonates with a version of you that is still unfolding. There may also be a growing awareness of timing, an understanding that certain things are happening exactly when they are meant to, even if they don't align with your expectations. Delays that once felt frustrating may begin to make sense in retrospect. Encounters that seemed insignificant may reveal their importance later on. It is as if your experience of time itself is becoming more fluid, less rigid, allowing you to see how different moments connect across a broader timeline. This shift can be both grounding and unsettling, because it challenges the idea that everything must be immediate or clearly defined in order to be meaningful. Emotionally, this phase may bring a mixture of calm and uncertainty. There can be moments where you feel deeply aligned, almost at peace with the direction things are taking, even without concrete evidence. And then there may be moments where doubt surfaces, where the lack of clarity feels uncomfortable, where you question whether you are interpreting things correctly. This contrast is natural. It reflects the transition you are in, the space between what you used to rely on and what you are beginning to understand. You are learning to navigate without needing constant confirmation, to move forward even when the path isn't fully visible. What matters is not that you have all the answers right now, but that you remain present with what you are experiencing. Because these subtle shifts are not random disturbances, they are indicators. They are signals that something is aligning, that the distance between you and what is meant to connect with you is continuing to narrow. And as this awareness deepens, you will begin to recognize that these moments, as quiet and intangible as they may seem, are part of a larger unfolding, one that is gradually guiding you toward a connection that is no longer distant, but approaching with increasing clarity. This is where everything begins to take on a deeper level of meaning, because what is unfolding now is not just about awareness or subtle shifts. It is about alignment reaching a point where connection becomes inevitable. You are entering a phase where the idea of isolation, of moving through your journey entirely on your own, starts to dissolve. Not because you suddenly depend on others, but because the version of you that has been forming is no longer meant to exist in separation. There is a certain level of growth that, once reached, naturally draws in those who are able to recognize it, resonate with it, and respond to it. And that is exactly what is beginning to happen here. Up until this point, much of your progress has been internal. The changes you experienced were not always visible to others, and even when they were often misunderstood or overlooked. You learned how to process things on your own, how to build strength without external validation, and how to keep moving forward even when no one acknowledged the effort it required. That phase was necessary. It created a foundation that could not be easily shaken, a sense of self that was not dependent on constant reassurance or approval. But now, that same foundation is becoming the reason why connection is possible. Because what you have built within yourself is now stable enough to interact with something beyond you without losing its shape. What makes this phase different is that the connections approaching you are not random or surface level. They are drawn to the specific frequency of who you are becoming. This means that the interactions you begin to experience may feel unusually significant, even if they appear simple on the outside. A conversation might linger in your mind longer than expected. A person's presence might feel familiar in a way you cannot explain. There may be a sense of recognition that goes beyond memory, as if something within you acknowledges them before logic has the chance to catch up. These are not coincidences in the traditional sense. They are responses, reactions to the alignment that has been building within you over time. At the same time, this phase asks something from you. It asks you to remain open in a way that might feel unfamiliar. When you have spent so long navigating things on your own, allowing connection can feel like stepping into uncertainty again. There may be a part of you that wants to observe from a distance, to maintain control, to protect the space you have carefully built. And that instinct is understandable. But this moment is not about returning to who you were. It is about expanding into something more. It is about learning how to let others into your experience without losing the clarity and strength you have developed. There is also an element of trust involved, not just in others, but in the process itself. Because you may not fully understand why certain people are appearing now, or why certain interactions feel so charged with meaning. The mind will naturally try to analyze, to categorize, to define. But not everything in this phase will be immediately clear. Some connections will reveal their purpose gradually, unfolding over time rather than presenting themselves all at once. What matters is your ability to recognize the feeling of alignment when it happens, the sense that something fits, even if you cannot yet explain how or why. And as this continues, you will begin to see that everything you went through before was not just preparation in a general sense. It was preparation for this exact stage. The strength you built, the awareness you developed, the resilience you cultivated in solitude, all of it now serves a new purpose. It allows you to engage, to connect, and to experience something beyond yourself without losing the essence of who you are. This is no longer just about becoming. It is about meeting. Meeting those who can see you, who can understand you, and who have been, in their own way, moving toward the same point of connection all along. And when that moment finally arrives, when the distance that once defined everything gives way to something direct and undeniable, you will begin to understand that none of this was, or without structure. What once felt like a series of disconnected experiences will start to reveal a deeper continuity, as if every step you took, every delay you endured, and every redirection you resisted was quietly guiding you toward this exact point. The realization may not come all at once. It may unfold gradually, in layers, as you begin to see how certain events align, how specific choices now make sense in ways they never did before. What once felt uncertain will begin to carry clarity, not because everything is explained, but because everything begins to feel coherent. In that moment of recognition, something within you will shift again. But this time, it will not feel like searching or questioning. It will feel like knowing. Not the kind of knowing that comes from logic or external confirmation, but something deeper and more grounded, as if your entire experience has been leading you to a truth that can only be understood by living through it. You will start to see that the people, the timing, and the circumstances surrounding this meeting are not random intersections, but precise convergences. Each element arrives with a sense of placement, as though it belongs exactly where it is, even if it took time to get there. What may surprise you the most is how natural it feels. After everything you have gone through, after all the internal shifts and silent growth, you might expect something overwhelming or dramatic. But instead, there is often a quiet familiarity, a sense that this moment, this connection, has been forming long before it became visible. It does not need to prove itself loudly, because something within you already recognizes it. This recognition does not erase uncertainty entirely, but it softens it. It replaces the need for constant questioning with a sense of grounded presence, where you are able to experience what is happening without needing to immediately define it. At the same time, this moment carries responsibility, because being seen, truly seen, is different from being observed at a distance. It invites you to stand fully in who you have become, without retreating into older versions of yourself for comfort. There is a kind of honesty required here, a willingness to remain aligned with your growth even as you engage with others who now enter your space. This can feel vulnerable, because connection always introduces the possibility of change, of influence, of expansion beyond what you have known. But it is also where depth is found, where something real begins to take shape. You may also notice that this meeting does not mark an ending, but a continuation in a new form. The journey does not stop here. It evolves. What changes is the way you experience it. You are no longer moving entirely alone, nor are you navigating without reflection. There is interaction now, exchange, a shared presence that adds new dimensions to your path. This does not take away from your individuality. It enhances it, giving you new perspectives, new challenges, and new ways of understanding both yourself and the world around you. And as you move forward from this point, you will carry a deeper awareness of everything that led you here. The feeling of being watched, once distant and intangible, transforms into something grounded and real. The unknown becomes familiar, the abstract becomes personal, and the journey that once felt isolating becomes something shared. You begin to realize that this was never about being followed or observed in the way you first imagined. It was about being recognized, about being seen in your becoming, and eventually, about being met in that space. And now that the meeting has begun, everything that follows will be shaped not just by who you are alone, but by what unfolds when that recognition turns into connection.